The alien ships burned in the darkness of space like dying stars. Admiral Kethfer pressed his face against the cold window of his command ship and watched another one of his vessels explode. The enemy had come from nowhere 3 days ago. Black ships that moved like hunting animals, tearing through his fleet with weapons that cut metal like paper. His people called them the Void Swarm, machine ships with no pilots inside, controlled by something that thought faster than any living mind. They did not talk. They did not make deals. They just killed everything in their path and moved on to the next world. Kethfer's hands shook as he counted what remained of his once proud fleet. 300 ships had defended this system when the attack began. Now, only 47 still flew, and most of those leaked air and sparks from their broken hulls. The great shield that protected his home planet flickered like a candle in the wind. Soon it would fail completely. Below, on the planet's surface, billions of his people waited, in underground shelters. The lucky ones had already escaped on the big transport ships, but those ships moved slowly, and the enemy hunted them down one by one. Each explosion in the sky meant thousands more of his people would never see another sunrise. The communication officer, a young female with purple skin marked by fear, turned to face him. Her voice cracked when she spoke. "Admiral, we have lost contact with the northern defense line. The enemy has broken through. They are heading straight for the evacuation ships." Kethfer closed his eyes. He had sent messages to every friendly world in the galaxy, begging for help. The mighty hegemony had not answered. The ancient ethereal race had gone silent weeks ago. Even the war-loving Krex Empire had sent back only one word: impossible. The swarm had already eaten 17 star systems. Whole civilizations had simply vanished, their planets left as empty rocks floating in space. No one knew where the machines came from or what they wanted. They just appeared, destroyed everything that lived, and moved on like a disease spreading through the galaxy. Another explosion lit up the darkness outside. This time it was one of the evacuation transports, packed with civilians trying to reach safety. Kethfer watched the pieces of the ship drift apart and knew that 50,000 of his people had just died. Children, families, old ones who had lived through 3 wars and thought they were finally safe. His tactical officer pointed at the display screen. "Sir, they are forming up for another attack. Estimate 15 minutes before they reach the main evacuation route." Kethfer looked at the screen showing red dots moving toward the blue dots that represented his people trying to escape. The mathematics were simple and cruel. His remaining ships could not stop them. The planet's defenses were almost gone. In less than an hour, the swarm would begin destroying the surface cities, and by tomorrow his entire world would be nothing but dust and memories. The bridge crew looked at him with eyes that had already accepted death. These were good soldiers who had served with honor for many years. They deserved better than this ending. Their families deserved better. The children hiding in the deep shelters deserved to grow up and have children of their own. But the galaxy had abandoned them. No help was coming. The great powers had either fallen to the swarm already, or were too far away to matter. His people would die alone, just like all the others had died alone. Kethfer straightened his uniform and walked to the center of the bridge. His crew watched him with respect, waiting for his final orders. Outside the window, the black enemy ships moved closer, like sharks smelling blood in the water. "Signal all remaining vessels," he said in a voice that did not shake. "We will form one last battle line between the enemy and our people. We cannot win, but we can buy time for a few more transports to escape. Every minute we fight is another 1,000 lives saved." His officers nodded and began sending the orders. Ships that should have been in repair docks turned to face the approaching enemy. Captains, who had lost half their crews, prepared for one final charge against impossible odds. The communication officer looked up from her station. "Admiral, Captain Veltar wants to know if we should request terms of surrender." Kethfer almost laughed. Surrender to machines that had never shown mercy to any living thing. Tell Captain Veltar that we are Zephyrians. We do not surrender our children to monsters. The enemy ships grew larger in the windows. Soon they would be close enough to begin the final slaughter. Kethfer thought about his own family, already dead in the first attack 3 days ago. At least he would see them again soon. He was about to give the order to attack when something impossible happened. His censor officer, an old male who had served in the fleet for 30 years, looked up with confusion on his face. Sir, I am reading new contacts on the edge of the system. Unknown vessels, approximately 30 ships. They are not broadcasting any identification signals. Kethfer frowned. More enemies. It seemed cruel that the swarm would bring reinforcements when his people were already beaten. But as he watched the sensor display, something strange happened. The new ships were not moving toward his world. Instead, they hung motionless in space, as if they were watching and waiting. Captain Lee, Hannah floated in the command chair of her ship, watching the battle through screens that showed everything happening in the star system. Her vessel, the UES Defiant, hung invisible in the darkness at the edge of space. 30 other human ships waited with her, all hidden by special technology that made them impossible to see. The alien defenders were losing badly. Hannah could see their ships breaking apart under the enemy's weapons. The machines they called the Void Swarm moved like pack hunters, surrounding and destroying everything that fought back. It was hard to watch, but Hannah's orders were clear. Do not reveal yourself. Do not make contact. Just observe and learn. Her tactical officer, Kim Jun, sat at the station next to her. He was young for such an important job, but Earth needed every trained person they had. The planet had been preparing for war ever since the alien crash 6 months ago. Captain, Jun whispered, even though no one outside could hear them, the alien defense line is falling apart. I count maybe 20 minutes before those machine ships reach the civilian transports. Hannah nodded, but said nothing. She had been watching this battle for 2 hours now, and every minute made her more angry. The defenders fought with honor and skill, but they followed old rules that did not work against an enemy like this. They formed neat lines, aimed carefully at specific targets, and tried to disable, rather than destroy. It was how civilized people fought wars. The problem was that the swarm did not care about being civilized. Hannah remembered the briefing back on Earth. A damaged alien scout ship had crashed in Australia, and the dying pilot had tried to warn them about the machine plague spreading through the galaxy. By the time the alien died, human scientists had already learned enough from his ship to understand the terrible truth. Earth was next on the list, but humans had one advantage. The galaxy did not know they existed yet, while other worlds sent proud messages, announcing themselves to their neighbors. Earth had stayed quiet and watched. Human ships were crude compared to these advanced alien vessels, but they had been built with one simple idea in mind. If you cannot be stronger than your enemy, be more willing to do whatever it takes to win. Ma'am, the communications officer Lee Mina said softly, I am picking up distress signals from the planet's surface. Sounds like they are evacuating cities. On the main screen, Hannah watched another alien warship explode. The crew had probably tried to surrender or retreat when their shields failed. The swarm machines just kept firing until nothing was left but pieces floating in space. These machines did not take prisoners. Her weapons officer, Park Hyun, looked at her with questions in his eyes that he did not dare ask. All around the bridge, her crew watched the slaughter and waited for orders. They had trained for this moment, but training was different from watching real people die while you did nothing to help. Hannah understood their feelings. She felt the same anger burning in her chest. But Earth had sent this small fleet to learn, not to fight. If they revealed themselves now, every alien civilization would know that humans existed. The next time the swarm came to Earth, they would be ready for human tactics. Another explosion lit up the darkness. This time it was one of the big transport ships carrying civilians away from the planet. Hannah counted the pieces and estimated that maybe 50,000 alien families had just died. Children who would never grow up, parents who would never see home again. Her first officer, Commander Nam Yuri, leaned close to her chair. "Captain, permission to speak freely. Go ahead. These people are going to die. All of them. We could make a difference." Hannah looked at the tactical display showing the battle. The alien admiral was brave, she had to admit. His remaining ships were forming up for one last charge, even though they had no chance of winning. He was going to sacrifice his entire fleet just to buy a few more minutes for the evacuation ships. "Commander, our orders are to observe and return to Earth with intelligence about enemy capabilities. If we engage now, we lose the element of surprise for the real war." "Yes, ma'am. But if we do nothing, we are no better than the machines." The words hit Hannah like a physical blow. She thought about her own children back on Earth, safe in their schools and parks. What would she want someone to do if it was Earth, under attack and her family trying to escape? The alien admiral's ships began their final charge. Hannah could see on the sensors that they would last maybe 5 minutes against the swarm. After that, the machines would hunt down every remaining transport ship and kill everyone aboard. She opened a secure channel to all the human ships in her fleet. "All vessels, this is Captain Lee Hannah of the Defiant. I am about to give you orders that go against our original mission. Any captain who refuses will not face court-martial. This is my choice alone." The channel stayed quiet for a moment. Then Commander Park Min-ho of the destroyer Soul's Hammer spoke up. "Ma'am, just give us the word." One by one, the other captains confirmed they were ready. Hannah felt proud of her people, even as she knew she might be making the biggest mistake in human history. Execute Operation Lazarus. We go in silent, we hit hard, and we disappear. As far as history knows, we were never here. The swarm's mind worked like a giant computer, thinking with the power of 1,000 ships connected together. It saw everything that happened in the battle and calculated the best way to destroy each enemy. When 31 new ships appeared, from nowhere, the machine intelligence paused for exactly 1 second to study them. The new vessels looked crude and simple. Their hulls were made of basic steel instead of advanced materials. Their engines burned chemical fuel like ancient rockets. Their weapons appeared to be simple projectile launchers, the kind of primitive tools that civilizations used before they learned to bend energy and matter to their will. The swarm marked these newcomers as a minor threat and assigned only a small portion of its attention to them. The main focus would remain on destroying the alien defense fleet and then hunting down the civilian transports. These primitive ships could wait. This was the swarm's first mistake. The human ships did not announce themselves. They did not send messages demanding surrender or offering terms. They did not even try to communicate with the alien defenders they had come to help. They simply opened fire. But their weapons were not what the swarm expected. Instead of single shots aimed at specific targets, the human ships unleashed clouds of metal projectiles. Thousands of steel slugs, each one moving at speeds that made them invisible to the naked eye. The projectiles spread out like deadly rain, covering huge areas of space. The swarm's shields were designed to stop energy beams and deflect plasma bolts. They had adapted to every type of advanced weapon used by the galaxy's great civilizations. But they could not stop simple pieces of metal moving fast enough to punch through solid steel like it was paper. A swarm dreadnought, one of the massive ships that had been tearing apart the alien defense fleet, suddenly came apart in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. The human destroyer that had fired the killing shot was already turning toward its next target, launching another cloud of projectiles without pause. Commander Park Min-ho stood on the bridge of Soul's Hammer and watched his weapons tear the enemy apart. His ship carried no fancy energy cannons or gravity manipulators, just simple railguns that threw chunks of metal very, very fast. The enemy's advanced shields meant nothing against basic physics. "Target the big one on the left," he told his weapons officer. "Full spread, all guns." The Soul's hammer shuddered as every railgun fired at once. The enemy ship tried to turn away, but the projectiles reached it in seconds. The swarm vessel's hull split open like a broken egg, venting atmosphere and debris into space. What confused the swarm most was how the humans fought. They did not form careful battle lines or coordinate their attacks through radio signals. They worked in complete silence, moving like they had practiced this exact battle 100 times before. When one human ship was damaged, another would immediately move to cover it without being asked. Lieutenant Yoon Sora piloted her fighter through the enemy formation, her small craft dancing between the massive swarm ships like a bird flying through a forest. When her missiles ran out, she did something that made the alien machines pause in confusion. She aimed her fighter directly at an enemy cruiser and accelerated to full speed. The impact destroyed both ships instantly, but it also created a gap in the swarm's formation that 3 human destroyers immediately exploited. They poured through the opening, their weapons cutting apart 2 more enemy vessels before the swarm could react. Admiral Kethfer watched from his command ship in amazement. These unknown warriors fought like nothing he had ever seen. They used their own vessels as weapons, sacrificing themselves without hesitation to destroy larger enemy ships. When conventional tactics failed, they tried things that no civilized military would ever consider. Captain Bei Hyen's ship was surrounded by 3 swarm vessels. His hull cracked and his weapons offline. Instead of trying to escape or calling for help, he did something that shocked even his human allies. He overloaded his ship's fusion reactor and detonated it like a bomb. The explosion vaporized all 4 ships, but it also created an electromagnetic pulse that disabled the shields on 6 nearby swarm vessels. Human fighters immediately swarmed over the defenseless enemies, their simple kinetic weapons turning advanced alien technology into scrap metal. The swarm's collective mind began to experience something it had never felt before: uncertainty. These primitive newcomers did not fight to win in any way the machines understood. They fought to make sure their enemies lost, no matter what it cost them. When the swarm adapted its shields to better deflect kinetic projectiles, the humans switched to different weapons. Major Choi Day's assault ship launched boarding pods, filled with nuclear mines. The small pods attached themselves to swarm hulls and exploded, creating holes that vented the ship's atmosphere into space. When the machines learned to intercept the boarding pods, Captain Nam Yuri tried something even more desperate. She pointed her ship's faster-than-light drive at an enemy dreadnought and activated it while still inside normal space. The resulting space-time distortion tore both vessels apart, but it also created a gravitational wave that crushed 3 other swarm ships. The alien defenders, inspired by the humans' example, began copying their tactics. Zephyrian captains, who had spent their careers following proper military doctrine, suddenly found themselves ramming enemy ships and detonating their own weapons to maximize damage. The swarm realized too late that it was no longer fighting civilized opponents. These were creatures that treated mutual destruction as an acceptable outcome. Captain Lee Hanna's ship shook violently as another enemy vessel exploded against her hull. The Defiant had lost most of its armor plating and half of its weapons, but she kept pushing forward into the heart of the enemy formation around her. The bridge crew worked in grim silence, their faces lit by the red glow of emergency lights. The human fleet had been fighting for 20 minutes now, and the cost was terrible. Of the 31 ships that had entered the battle, only 12 were still capable of fighting. But those 12 ships had destroyed more than 60 swarm vessels, and the tide of battle was finally turning. Hanna watched her tactical display and smiled grimly. The enemy machines were starting to make mistakes. For the first time since the battle began, The swarm was reacting instead of attacking. Their perfect formations were breaking apart as they tried to adapt to human tactics that made no sense to their computer minds. "Captain," her weapons officer, Park Hyun, called out, "railguns are overheated and ammunition is down to 15%. Request permission to switch to emergency protocols." Hannah nodded. Emergency protocols meant using the ship's own systems as weapons. It was dangerous and usually fatal, but it was also incredibly effective against enemies who did not expect such desperate measures. Across the battlefield, Major Choi Dae was already implementing the most extreme version of human combat doctrine. His assault transport, Bison's Pride, had been designed to carry troops into battle, but now it served a different purpose. When his conventional weapons failed to penetrate a swarm dreadnought's defenses, he ordered his crew to load the transport bays with nuclear mining charges. "Sir?" his nervous co-pilot asked. "Those charges are meant for breaking apart asteroids. If we get too close when they detonate ... then we die," Choi Dae said simply. "But so do they, and that's all that matters." The Bison's Pride accelerated directly toward the enemy dreadnought. The swarm ship's weapons tore chunks from the human vessel's hull, but Choi Dae kept flying straight at his target. At the last possible moment, he ejected all the mining charges and pulled his ship into a desperate turn. The nuclear explosions lit up space like a new sun. The swarm dreadnought vanished in the blast, along with two smaller enemy ships that had been nearby. The Bison's Pride survived, but barely. Its hull cracked, and its engines failing. The swarm's collective mind struggled to understand what it was seeing. These humans did not fight like any species it had encountered before. Most civilizations valued their ships and crews, using them carefully to achieve victory with minimal losses. But humans seemed to view their own vessels as ammunition, expendable tools to be used up in pursuit of the enemy's destruction. Captain Nam Yuri demonstrated this philosophy perfectly when her destroyer's main weapons were knocked out by enemy fire. Instead of retreating to make repairs, she did something that horrified even her own allies. She aimed her ship's faster-than-light drive directly at a cluster of swarm vessels and began charging it for activation. "Captain," her engineering officer shouted over the alarms, "if we activate the FTL drive while we're still in normal space, it will tear our ship apart." "I know," Yuri replied calmly. "It will also create a space-time distortion that should destroy everything within a kilometer radius. Signal the other ships to clear the area." Her crew looked at her with a mixture of fear and admiration. They had trained for this scenario, but actually doing it was different from practicing in simulators. Still, they followed their orders without question. This was what they had signed up for when they joined Earth's first interstellar fleet. The FTL drive activated with a sound like reality tearing apart. Nam Yuri's ship imploded in a flash of twisted space-time, but the gravitational shockwave it created crushed four swarm vessels like insects. The enemy formation scattered in panic, their perfect coordination broken by an attack they had never imagined possible. Admiral Kethfer watched these impossible warriors from his command bridge and felt his understanding of warfare change forever. His people had always fought with honor, following rules that had been established over thousands of years of civilized conflict. But honor meant nothing to an enemy that showed no mercy, and rules were useless against machines that felt no fear. "All ships," he broadcast to his remaining fleet, "follow the stranger's example, ramming speed on all vectors. If we're going to die today, let's make sure we take as many of them with us as possible." The Zephyrian vessels, inspired by human desperation, began adopting the same suicidal tactics. Ships that should have been retreating for repairs instead flew directly at enemy targets, their crews determined to make their deaths count for something. The swarm found itself fighting an enemy that could not be reasoned with, bargained with, or intimidated. Every ship they destroyed seemed to inspire the others to fight even harder. When they adapted to one human tactic, the humans immediately switched to something even more extreme. Captain Bayhine's cruiser was completely surrounded by enemy vessels, its shields down and weapons destroyed. In the old days, this would have been the moment to surrender and hope for mercy. But the swarm had never shown mercy to anyone, and humans had never learned how to surrender. "All hands," Hyen announced over the ship's intercom. "It has been an honor serving with you. Reactor overload in 10 seconds. The explosion, when his ship's fusion reactor detonated, created a brief new star in the darkness of space. The last enemy ship broke apart in a shower of sparks and twisted metal, its pieces drifting slowly through the darkness of space. For the first time in 3 days, the Zephyr system was quiet, except for the soft hum of damaged engines and the whispered prayers of survivors. Captain Lee Hannah looked around her ruined bridge and counted the cost of victory. Of the 31 human ships that had entered the battle, only 7 were still able to fly, and most of those were barely holding together with emergency power and hope. Her own ship, the Defiant, had lost its main engines and half its hull plating. Emergency lights flickered in the smoke-filled air, and she could hear the sound of repair crews working frantically to keep life support running. But they had won. The void swarm was gone, scattered into 1,000,000 pieces across the star system. The alien planet below was safe, its people alive because a small group of humans had decided that some things were worth dying for, even if no one would ever know. Their names. Communications Officer Lim Jin looked up from her damaged console. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the alien admiral. He wants to know who we are." Hannah closed her eyes for a moment. This was the part she had been dreading. Admiral Kethver's message was formal and grateful, full of praise for their sacrifice and requests for information that humanity could not afford to give. "Unknown vessels," the alien commander's voice came through the static-filled speakers. "You have saved our world and our people from certain destruction. Please identify yourselves so that the Zephyrian Republic may properly honor your courage and sacrifice. The galaxy must know of your heroism." But that was exactly what could not happen. If the galaxy learned about Earth now, before humanity was ready, the next attack might not be stopped. The swarm had been defeated here, but there were other threats in the darkness between stars. Earth needed time to prepare, time to build more ships, and train more crews for the wars that were surely coming. Hannah looked at her surviving officers. Kim Jun's left arm was in a medical brace, and Park Hae-in had burns across half his face from an exploding console. Lim Jin's uniform was torn and stained with blood, but her eyes were clear and determined. These people had followed her into an impossible battle, and somehow lived to see the other side. "Signal the fleet," Hannah ordered quietly. "All ships prepare for immediate departure. We're going home." The human vessels began moving toward the edge of the star system, their damaged engines struggling to maintain formation. Some ships had to be towed by others, their crews working around the clock too. Keep basic systems running. It would be a long journey back to Earth, and not all of them might make it. Admiral Kethver's flagship moved closer, its captain clearly wanting answers to questions that could not be answered. The alien admiral sent another message, this one more urgent than the first. "Please, unknown friends, do not leave without allowing us to thank you properly. Your tactics and courage have saved millions of lives. Surely the galaxy deserves to know of such heroism." Just before her ship entered the faster-than-light tunnel that would carry them home, Hannah opened a single communication channel to the Zephyrian commander. Her message would be the only proof that humans had ever been in this system, and even that would soon be forgotten. "Admiral Ktiva," she transmitted, "we were never here. Your people fought bravely, and won through their own skill and determination. That is the story your historians should record. That is the truth the galaxy needs to hear." The human ships vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind only empty space and the wreckage of their enemies. Admiral Kethver stared at the spot where they had disappeared, his mind struggling to process what he had witnessed. His communications officer, A young female, whose purple skin still showed marks of fear and exhaustion, looked at him with confusion. "Sir, should I prepare a report about the unknown vessels for the Republic Council?" Kethver was quiet for a long time, thinking about what he had seen. Ships that fought like demons, crews that sacrificed themselves without hesitation, warriors who asked for nothing in return except the chance to save innocent lives. Perhaps someday the galaxy would be ready to learn that such people existed somewhere among the stars, but not today. "Prepare a full battle report," he said finally. "Record that the Zephyrian Defense Fleet, through innovative tactics and exceptional bravery, managed to defeat the Void Swarm invasion. Make special note of the courage shown by our crews in the final assault." The communications officer hesitated. "Sir, what about the other ships, the ones that helped us?" Kethver looked out at the debris field that marked the site of their impossible victory. Somewhere in that wreckage were the remains of human ships and human heroes who had died to save a world they had never seen before. They had asked for no reward except the right to remain unknown. "What other ships?" he asked quietly. "I saw only Zephyrian vessels fighting for their home." The report would be filed exactly as he ordered, and across the galaxy, military analysts would puzzle over how a small defense fleet had achieved such an unlikely victory. But in the deep reaches of space, Earth's battered ships limped toward home, carrying with them the knowledge that when the next crisis came, humanity would again be ready to not exist.